Welcome guys! Today I have quite a short but insane game to showcase. Now this was played in 2017 between two very well-known grandmasters. With white we have Vasil Ivanchuk and with black we have Wei Yi. Now this game involved a king in the middle of the board in the first 20 moves. Which sounds crazy, but let's take a look. Now Vasil started the game with d4, we have knight f6, we have c4, a6, knight c3, bishop b4, pinning the knight, knight f3, d5, we see an exchange here in the center, we have bishop g4 also pinning black's knight, and black immediately starts posing questions. We have h6, hitting the bishop, bishop to h4, keeping the pin, black castles his king, e3, trying to develop Vasil tries to develop his bishop to d3, but Wei Yi immediately anticipates this and plays bishop f5, seizing control of the diagonal. Now instead of developing the bishop, first Ivanchuk brings his rook to the semi-open file. You have knight bd7 by Wei Yi, and in this position Ivanchuk plays queen b3 here, also posing questions to the black bishop here, because this also puts pressure on this pawn here. The knight is just pinned, so if the bishop goes anywhere, then white is just gonna take this pawn, right? So Wei Yi decides to just eliminate this knight. We have rook takes on c3, and as you can see, there's a lot of pressure here on the queen side, but Wei Yi he completely ignores this pawn and just plays c6. And you might be thinking, well, these guys are grandmasters, why is there a pawn being blundered on move 10? Well, actually, as is often the case in these positions, you have to be very mindful when grabbing a pawn on b7 or on b2 if you're black with the queen, because often there's a lot of traps. So let's take a look. If the pawn were to be taken, actually white would be in a bit of trouble, because black would simply play rook b8, seize the now open file and say thank you for everything, because as you can see, the king is just extremely weak here, is kind of far away from being safe, from being castled, so black would just exploit this. Even if white tries to be greedy and capture another pawn, rook takes on b2 and the checks are coming, the queen is getting in, the pin is going to be released, the knight will hit the rook, and this is just not going to be fun. For example, if you try to block the checks, now even queen a5 and the king is just almost dead here. Yes, you sort of have to block, but now rook c8. Yeah, rook c8 and the game is pretty much over, because the queen here is pinned, and yeah, you sort of sacrifice the queen because this will lead to checkmate. This is only one variation for you to have an idea how dangerous this is if white is to take the pawn. In this position, it's like I said, you always have to consider if you capture these pawns. So in the game, Ivanchuk plays more conservatively, and he plays knight e2. Just seizing control of e4, and even though okay, the knight is pinned now, but this idea is always important to have in mind, so he just plays knight e2, also closes the diagonal. Now Wei Yi here plays queen a5, releasing from the pin like I said, and even though okay, Ivanchuk has a little bit of control here, he isn't satisfied, so he plays f3 and just says okay, stop flying around, no piece is ever going to land on that square. However, this comes with some compromises, because as you can see, this pawn is now a bit weak and there are some weaknesses maybe to be exploited by black in the future. This isn't really a problem so far because white still has a dark square bishop, but let's take a look. Wei Yi immediately jumps on this file, he attacks this kind of weak pawn that so far is protected, but let's see. Ivanchuk here plays king f2, which is already a bit daring, but as you can see, the king lays completely safe here on f2. Black really has no way to touch it. He also overprotects this pawn here on e3, so makes a lot of sense. Now Wei Yi brings the other rook, the only piece that wasn't doing anything, and he tries to open the c file and is just gonna try to open the position and attack Ivanchuk's king. Ivanchuk brings the bishop to bring the other rook, plays bishop e2. Like I said, Wei Yi tries to open that diagonal, the file, sorry, he plays c5. And instead of bringing the other rook, because if he is to bring the rook, then simply c4, and honestly, white will just be murdered here on the queen side. Basically, these pawns are just going to roll forward, and white is just going to be extremely cluttered. So instead, Ivanchuk tries to trade here. We have rook takes. The rook is brought from his tomb. He plays rook h to c1. And now this is basically the critical position, because here Wei Yi has a couple of options to exploit the weak king here, but he plays one that it seems kind of innocent, but it will actually haunt him and determine the fate of the game. Now in this position, Wei Yi, and we'll get back to why this move is so bad for Wei Yi's intentions. Here Wei Yi plays g5, and this move hits the bishop. It weakens the king a lot, but so far Ivanchuk can't really exploit it, so he's just forced to play bishop g3. Basically, could also trade the rook, but this is the most natural, keeping the tension. And now Wei Yi stops, calculates this for a moment, and can you spot the sacrifice here? The most tempting sacrifice. It's not super intuitive, but hold on, because this is about to get messy. Here, in this position, Grandmaster, the Chinese Grandmaster plays rook takes pawn. And this move looks absolutely cool, but one thing is looking cool and the other is working. So let's take a look. Now, first things first, this move kind of pins this rook to the queen. Also, if this rook takes, now this rook here is falling and the rook is infiltrating. White will actually have quite a tough time defending this. And last but not least, if you take this rook, then the rook can sacrifice itself here and the knight can take here. And again, the king here on e2, this won't be very pleasant for white to defend. So in this position, Ivanchuk, there's also another option, that is going with the king forward. But this seems insane, because if king takes rook, there's d4 here, and the pawn isn't protected, but this forks the king and the rook, so the king goes forward, and Ivanchuk went for this line, because in this position, okay, there's a king on d4, and it's like move 20, okay? But how the hell are you gonna checkmate it? Because, okay, it looks completely dangerous, but is it? Because let's rewind a little bit, and let's say we go for this variation without g5. So in this position, after the rook comes here, instead of g5, we sacrifice it immediately. We go for the same variation. Now in this position, there's actually checkmate in 2. If you want, you can try to pause. It's a really nice exercise. But black can sacrifice the rook here, rook c4, and this is pretty cool. But okay, if the king is completely boxed in here, if the king goes back, queen c5 is actually checkmate. Everything is completely cut off here. So the rook is kind of forced to be taken, but now queen c5, and this is actually checkmate because of the bishop here, and the knight obviously protects. And the key here is that this square isn't taken, because let's take a look. Same thing if the knight captures, queen c5 is checkmate all the same. But the difference is that if the queen takes, well, this protects c5, so now the queen would actually have to go to e5, and again in the same way this would be checkmate, but not if the bishop is on g3. And that was actually what happened in the game, right? If we remember, g5 was played, the bishop on g3, and only then the rook is sacrificed, and we go into this variation. And now there's no rook c4, because, well, simply queen takes here, and where's your checkmate, bro? So in the game, I don't know, maybe Wei Yi just miscalculated, or he just thought that there would be a way, but there really isn't. He tried playing rook here, just stopping the king from escaping, and this is actually pretty clever, because it seems to hang a rook, and okay, Ivanchuk, if he were to grab this rook, this would actually be tragic, because now this e5 square is just critical. Now the queen retakes, after the king moves, queen c5 is checkmate like before, because this square here is taken and the queen removes the other squares. So in the game, after rook here trying to stop and also attacking the bishop, Ivanchuk just keeps his cool, and with the king on d4 he plays the bishop to d3, and it's the best move according to the computer. It seems insane because the king is just completely restricted. The king only has a move here, but there's no way to exploit it. The white pieces shield him perfectly. Wei Yi just has to admit defeat. He basically goes with the bishop back, attacking the queen, not allowing the trade. And it's actually pretty interesting because, okay, if the queen goes back, one wrong move and boom, queen d5, checkmate. But again, Ivanchuk keeps his cool and queen takes on b7, the only square to keep watch of the d5 square. And this is insane, but there's no way to deflect the queen from defending that square. In a game where he tried to pass a move, played king g7, also escaping from the checks. But Ivanchuk now will organize his pieces. He plays knight d4 and basically closes this file. Now the king will just run back. Where he tries desperately to create something, he plays knight here, trying to stop the king from escaping, because if the king escapes, then it's just going to be game over. Ivanchuk is up a ridiculous amount of material, but this allows the bishop to capture here with check. Where he recaptures, of course, hoping that maybe there's something if the king takes. Of course, this steps in this line, but Ivanchuk just clean technique with rook c5 closes this line here, and I mean, Wei Yi can't do nothing but resign. The queen will have to move, but then just king takes knight, and you have a king on e5, but there's no way to exploit it. Black is just dead. And I don't know. This game is honestly amazing. It shows that it isn't enough for a position to look good. Often intuition helps us a lot, but pure calculation in the end is what drives a chess position. So yeah, this was the famous king on d4 game by Ivanchuk, the famous Ivanchuk's king. So hope you enjoyed and hope you learned a thing or two.